In this video, I will talk about the importance of the sun through the example of famous adventure seeker Christopher McCandless, known from the movie and novel Into the Wild. Christopher had sun in Aquarius, 7th house, which means that his identity, his vitality, is based on finding uniqueness, his own unique individuality in relationship with others, in one-to-one partnership. That could be romantic partnership, marriage, but also other sort of friendship. This was the central organizing principle of Christopher's chart of his entire life. As with any other example, with any other chart, if the sun is expressed, well established, and developed, it organizes the chart into coherence and it can feed, it can stream the energy of the entire chart into the ascendant, through which I would say the rays of the sun reach the earth through our expression. So, in this way, we see he had a Leo ascendant. In this way, Christopher could shine his light, his warmth, his leadership in a very emotional, vulnerable way. It is a little bit of a Santa Claus archetype to me. Somebody very unique, maybe even a bit quirky due to this Aquarian energy. And then expressing himself through this grandiosity, warmth, almost like a Santa Claus. And at least from the photos I see, I can vision Christopher as a very joyful, very childlike person. But we know that the sun, despite the fact that it already is as the central force of our chart, can be hindered. It needs time to grow, needs time to establish its authority. And one of the ways the sun is hindered is through planets it contacts and its rulers. Let's begin from its rulers. We look into the rulers of the sun, and then if those rulers are not very fully developed, if, for instance, the sign is dwarfed by the planet, then the ruler in a way leaks the energy of the sun, doesn't feed it back to the sun, and acts like a thief in the chart. So let's see through these concrete examples of Christopher's rulers of his sun. First ruler is the traditional ruler Saturn. We see in Aries, 9th house. Aries in 9th house. Saturn can indicate uncertainty, discouragement. It can indicate restrictions. But also Saturn pulls us to develop, because when we nail our Saturn, we feel this mastery, this authority that I've nailed it. And in Aries, 9th house, there is a great archetype of adventure. That it seems that going on a quest, adventure, represented by 9th house, some sort of adventure to find meaning, adventure to find higher knowledge, in a way that is spontaneous, that is strong-willed, determined, was giving Christopher a sense of authority. But Saturn requires what? It requires preparation, step-by-step approach. So there's a risk to slip into spontaneity and underprepare for the challenges that can arise during the quest. And of course, Christopher was still pretty young during his adventure. So we can see that Saturn was a bit underexpressed. One of the real-life examples is that he was thrilled to explore the wild nature and even refused using maps. He wanted to simply explore it, discover on its own feet. So Saturn would not approve of it. Saturn would need structure. Another ruler of Christopher's sun is Uranus. This is the modern ruler of Aquarius, and it's in Virgo, third house. This ruler wants to individuate in a way of collecting knowledge, day-to-day experiences, and do it through mastery, through perfection, through Virgo qualities. And again, we see a little bit of tension here, similarly to Saturn, because Uranus really wants to individuate, right? Do its own way, but Virgo requires more preparation. Virgo requires more settlement, more research. And there is this paradox in Christopher's adventure that, yes, he did prepare himself, he did have some books that he read, but oftentimes Uranus would dominate. And it's illustrated in the example of him shooting the moose and preparing the meat, that he was basically dealing with such a huge task in a very, very exploratory way. And it didn't work out because the practical knowledge, will it really work, was somehow, overshadowed. Overall, from these two rulers, we see how the energy of the sun was leaking. And it really creates this notion, it gives me a notion that Christopher wanted to really explore on his own, really experience the thrill of his adventure, undermining the need for preparation, the need for practical knowledge oftentimes. And how could it threaten the expression of his sun? So I think simply, if he goes onto adventure that it's so extreme, so how can he invite someone to witness his adventure, right? Because the seventh house is the house of sharing something, having something or doing something with your partner, or at least having someone to witness it. So the sun gets threatened because in this extremity you can only go alone. Who would join you on your quest when you don't even use a map? Who would join you when you are hungry but you are experimenting how you're gonna preserve your meat? So literally, in a very practical way, the sun, its expression gets threatened. So I have just illustrated how the sun can leak through its rulers. Another way that the sun can leak is through planets that aspect it, through conjunction or through square. And I will talk about Neptune squaring the sun. Usually when there is a square between two planets, there is a conflict, and the energy can oscillate between one and another, right? In this case, it would be from the Sun to the Neptune. But to emphasize how the vitality of the Sun leaks, I will simply talk about the expression of Neptune absorbing the vitality of the Sun. So, Neptune in fourth house in Scorpio indicates disillusion in his early roots, in his family life, around his emotional core. Scorpio indicates secrecy, and these symbols depict quite accurately the traumatic experience of Christopher when, at the age of 18, he discovered that his father was having a double marital life, that his father married his mother or started relationship with his mother while still in relationship with his first wife. I think it really influenced him to go onto his adventure, to leave the values, the family heritage behind, because he was strongly affected by these news. Neptune in Scorpio in the 4th house, in the context of his adventure, indicates this need to dissolve some experiences that are painful and do it in secrecy, in privacy, in solitude. Neptunian dissolution can happen through various forms. In the lower form, it can be addiction, drugs, alcohol. In a higher form, it can be spiritual adventures, spiritual quests. In Christopher's case, it was, I think, this quest into the wild. So I think that having been impacted by this family story, he had this illusion perhaps that through this adventure, this solitudinal quest, he will heal, right? Because Neptune in its highest expression can heal, that he can heal. And I'm not saying that it wasn't possible, right? I think it's a beautiful way to deal with something like that. But the problem is that, as we can see, it was aspecting his sun. It was absorbing his vitality, so that he really lost contact with others to dissolve the pain, to dissolve this family, this painful family heritage. And this Neptunian position really tightly connects to what I've already talked about. And I have a feeling of the reason behind his journey. So there was something really inherently traumatic in his family story, right? So he just ran away from his family, from his roots, even changing his name. And he deeply believed, maybe subconsciously, that to really establish himself as independent unit from his family, he had to survive. He had to undergo something very extreme to finally say that, look, I am strong enough. And strong enough for what? To be my unique self, Aquarius, right? Where I could relate to others with my uniqueness, but not with false masks that, I want to leave behind. And yes, it's a beautiful way. It's written in his chart. He was meant to do something like that. But the problem is that he was doing all of this at the expense of human contact, of human relationship. And at the end of his life, he wrote, "Happiness only real when shared." He realized the purpose of his son. He realized the message. He realized the meaning of his son. Unfortunately, it was a bit too late. And quite literally, the vitality of his sun leaked, not just metaphorically, but literally. If we take vitality primarily as a physical force, he did wither. His sun lost its vitality, it seeped, it leaked. Yeah, and what could have been done differently? As you can probably guess, the only thing I could offer is realizing one core concept, that the sun already is. I think Christopher was trying to pay too high of a price to allow himself to be his unique self. He felt like he needs to master something, to go through this wild adventure, to finally be able to say, look, I've mastered it, I survived, so I can be myself. But he could have done it in a way where he already does have somebody to reflect him. And when Sun is in Aquarius, this relationship doesn't have to be a traditional marriage or a buddy that, follows him around in his adventure. It could be simply somebody who is accountable, who knows where he is, who can check on him, who can share ideas, bounce ideas with him. And I think that this would have saved his life. So, yeah, happiness only real when shared. That's the message of Aquarius in the 7th house that Christopher discovered. And the sun already is. We might need to grow into it, develop into it. His quest still has meaning, and I'm not saying he shouldn't have done it, but he should have done it in a way where he doesn't need to earn his sun, because his sun already is.